Thank you so much. First off, I want to thank Judy and her team for having me here. I am completely blown away by the hard work and dedication of Judy as well as past finalists, and have already really enjoyed getting to know all of you and look forward to what's ahead so I can hear more about your journeys. I was talking with Judy and I was sharing my latest news on my journey, and she said, would you please come to California and tell these kids about your journey? So I want to share from a very personal place what my path has looked like, because I think by sharing that it's going to help your journey. Because 28 years ago I was just like you guys. I was a student. At that time, I was a junior at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I wasn't born on an organic farm by hippie parents, and I really, though I was surrounded by trees, fortunate where I lived, we didn't recycle or go camping or anything like that, but I ended up at University of Wisconsin in Madison, which was this really progressive town, thinking that, it would be, kind of enlightened in a lot of ways. And I started taking classes in environmental studies and reading Aldo Leopold's The Land Ethic, which really opened up my eyes, and Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, and I became like a light switch, conscious of my impact on the earth. And I was like, wow, if I could become this conscious and aware, why doesn't this happen to everybody? Because if it did, then we'd all, recycle and be, more, concerned about the health of the planet in addition to our own health. Then I started looking around. I saw that our student union, there's trash cans overflowing, and I was just like, wow, this is such a progressive school, and yet, we don't even, bring our own mugs. So I became a really active and was very fortunate, and I think that this also relates a lot to you, which is also why I'm really happy to be here. I got an internship with the Sierra Club Yodeler in the Bay Area, and I was working with the editor of the newspaper, the Sierra Club's Bay Area newspaper, and I was like, wow, so, she's getting news out about, being, conscious of your impact on the earth and all the important environmental issues. At the same time, when I flew here in 1990, there was Redwood Summer, which is a now famous summer-long protest to protect the old-growth forests, and that was with Earth First. So I had this opportunity to intern with Sierra Club while going up to Humboldt County to protect old-growth forests. And I all of a sudden saw the spectrum of the grassroots environmental movement, from Earth First, which would be considered the most radical, no compromise, and defense of Mother Earth organization, to the Sierra Club, which back then was very much considered one of the more conservative organizations. So I was like, okay, so now I know how to, try and educate people on issues by publishing news, and then I, learned about nonviolent civil disobedience for my first time, and old-growth forests and biodiversity, and the importance of, old-growth forests and why it was critically important that we save them. I went back to school, and as a directed study, I launched my own newspaper and called Affinity, and I didn't even, so I'm old. I would print like the headlines with a computer, but I didn't even know what a font was. There was no email. Everything had to get hand typed in, and I published my first newspaper. We stood outside of the student union, and I had students help me pass them out. The first issue, I grabbed a photographer, a student photographer. We drove out to the landfill and took a picture of how much solid waste was being generated every 2 days at the student union, and that was the front cover. And all of a sudden, I started to get people, saying, hey, will you publish about this river we're trying to save, and this project that we're doing in our community? And I realized, wow, there's so many environmental issues beyond solid waste. Anyway, I graduate, come back to Cleveland. I'm a born, raised Clevelander, And I was like, well, I could never launch a newspaper in Cleveland because it's just too big. Madison, Wisconsin was so small. So, but after like a week, I was like, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. So I kept the name Affinity, and so for the next 10 years, I published this newspaper, and it ended up getting distributed all over the state of Ohio. I wanted to educate and motivate as many people as possible to become conscious of their impact on the earth, and once they did, then find the issue that they had an affinity for so that they then could engage and make a difference. So I did that 10 years, and then I had my 2 kids and realized that I needed to do something where I wasn't trying to carry all these newspapers all over and distribute them in hundreds of locations. I launched a graphic design business so that I could be at home for the next 5-6 years. And then when my son went to 1st grade, I put him on the bus and I went inside to my home office and I applied to become a nonprofit and I launched EcoWatch. I knew I wanted to publish again. It's just kind of like, I think all of you probably know somewhere inside like what it is that feeds you, what you think you're the best at, and what you really know you can have the most impact on. And I just knew it was publishing. So I launched EcoWatch as a nonprofit organization. Again, it was a newspaper in Ohio. I got it up to 80,000 copies. We distributed it in 2,200 locations, in movie theaters, laundromats, doctor offices, coffee shops. It was a free newspaper. Free newspapers used to be so popular. They're still out there, but that used to be how you got your news because there weren't cell phones. EcoWatch was doing really well, but I was like, well, everyone now is on their cell phone, and it was time to transition to online news. So it was a little more than 6 years ago I launched the online news site, ecowatch.org. I did that in partnership with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he flew to Cleveland. We did this huge event on the shore of the Cuyahoga River. The Cuyahoga River's, maybe many of you know, when it burned nearly 50 years ago. It helped ignite the modern day environmental movement, as well as many of the most important environmental policies like the Clean Water Act. So it was really apropos for us to do this event there because my vision and mission for 28 years has been to unite and amplify the voice of the grassroots movement and to mobilize millions of people to care about people and planet. Because what I realized way back when is, wow, there's so many people rolling their sleeves up every single day to protect our water and air. And back then, no one knew about it. Mainstream media didn't cover these issues at all. So after we flipped the switch from print to online, I realized that to really grow it like I wanted to, I needed an influx of capital. And I changed the business model from a nonprofit to a for-profit. Found some investors, and we transitioned from a .org to a .com, and that was about 4.5 years ago, and we've been able to grow to be one of the largest environmental news sites in the world. So we keep our finger on the pulse of the most important environmental news, and we amplify the voice of the grassroots movement. I've had some challenges with the for-profit model in the sense of the investors, and we don't always see eye to eye on the future of the company. So I had, as I said, I launched EcoWatch the day I put my son on the bus for 1st grade. I actually resigned the day before I took him to college. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. It made me incredibly vulnerable. Someone asked me if you could have known a few things, if there are a few things that you wish you would have known, earlier on, one is it's okay to feel vulnerable. One interesting thing that happened when I was, when we transitioned to the for-profit model, I had the money. Money for the first time wasn't an issue in trying to grow what I wanted to do. And then I realized that, okay, so now I'm going to grow a business model this way. And I grew it completely the wrong way. One day I just closed our office, moved back home to run the business, and regrew the business model, and everything was fine. I could have seen it as failure, but instead I saw it as opportunity. And it's so important to understand that, you know, when something's not going right, or, you know, that didn't work, and then, you know, try something else. You've got to keep rebuilding the business model until it works. One thing I hope everyone here realizes is you are all entrepreneurs. That's another thing I wish I would have maybe realized sooner. I literally had already started 4 different companies before I realized that I was an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneurial spirit's so powerful. I'm really confident that none of you would be here if you didn't have that entrepreneurial spirit. You guys worked so hard during the 30-day challenge. That's why you're here, because you guys are self-starters and you have, you know, the wisdom and the courage to try. And I think it's just so important to always remember that, you know, that failure, there is no such thing as failure. It's just there's other opportunity out there and you have to go get it. So, you know, I'm so, you know, amazed. You know, my journey has definitely been a roller coaster ride. Yours probably will be too, but it's perseverance and hard work. People sometimes say to me, oh, you're so lucky, you know so-and-so, and oh, you know, you can go do that and go do that. You know, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is when hard work meets opportunity. And sometimes it feels lucky, but it's only because you've worked so hard, you've stayed dedicated and passionate to what you truly believe in. And make sure you always stand by what you think is right. Stay true to your ethics, and also, you know, with mindfulness and intention. So use mindfulness and intention in the decisions you make, and you guys are all going to be great. So thank you.